let's do this. So this guy says, "Hey LS, I've been a fan and lurker for your content since Salon's Warwick, Man vs. Machine, and the Street Fighter Assassin's Fist videos way back when. My question to you is, do you have any countermeasures for the inevitable and unreasonable toxicity that will come your way because of your position within C9 and your polarizing reputation within the LoL community? In the past, you've gone on stream and said that most of your social support network comes in the form of your former BBQ players like Onion Autumn, Nemesis, formerly Sanchovies, and the infamous duo of Gengar, Nold, and Joseph Patrick Marsh. Realize that it's still possible to reach out and keep in touch with them, but the time difference between NA and Korea and the workload being a head coach may make that more difficult. Are you solely planning on leaning on people like Max and Fudge for in-person support, and have you taken additional measures to support your mental health?" So let's go step by step. Do I have any countermeasures for the inevitable and unreasonable toxicity that will come my way because of my position within C9 and the polarizing reputation within the LoL community? So the thing here is that as a content creator, and as someone that was co-streaming all of the regions, and as someone that was actively either adding people or, directly targeting certain plays inside of a game, discussing it, tweeting about it, making videos, uploading them to YouTube, etc. I feel like I'm very doubtful that the flame or criticism could ever be greater than what it already has been. I don't think that's entirely possible, especially because I think it's unreasonable to say that I would actually see all of it. And what I mean by that is that it's really hard to see all of it if there's so many different threads or if there's so many different areas, right? You're only going to see a portion of it. And that's why I think that there's a limit to the amount that I can even see. But yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily in place because I've just been doing this for years as a content creator, and I think that the way that I built my brand, as well as just the amount of interactions that I had publicly with the community and other people on public, in public platforms, I think it's not. I don't think it's likely to be that different. The next part is you've gone on stream and said that most of your social support network comes in the form of, and then you go on to list people close to me, and you cite a time difference. So what I can say is time difference doesn't really matter in esports, right? People are only sleeping anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a night. And most people in esports are extremely interconnected. At the time of doing this AMA, Joe's actually in the chat right now. Joe was in the chat as soon as I turned on the stream. I've made jokes in the past that, to me, Joe is one of the most hardest working people in esports because Joe was the only person who I ever met that seemingly was always awake when I was. And obviously that was a reference to when I was doing all the co-streams and all the different time zones, and it felt like I could always message Joe any hour of the night, regardless of if he was in Korea, if he was in PST, or if he was in EST. It didn't seem to matter what his time zone was. And I think the same goes with everyone else that's really listed. I think in esports, especially me, as someone, I operated primarily on Western time zones. So listing, people who generally operate in Western time zones seems a little bit weird that there would be some sort of connection issues, right? Max and Fudge are obviously at Cloud9. Sanchovies is, I believe, Eastern time zone or something. I do still talk to Sanchovies. I do still talk to Joe. I talk to Joe a lot in order to make the decision to go to Cloud9. I think Joe is one of the people I talk to the most when coming to that decision, right? Arnold is not someone that I've had difficulty talking with. Yeah, so I don't think time zones or anything like this makes it really different. And the workload of being a coach may make that more difficult. Yeah, I don't think this is actually the case. And then the final part is, are you solely planning on leaning on people like Mass and Fudge for in-person support, or have you taken additional measures to support your mental health? So I think some of the stuff that I did is, obviously a lot of people know that I took a 6-week break from the end of August right until World started, pretty much. And even in August, I think August was my least streamed month ever in the last 4 or 5 years, outside of September, where I literally streamed, I think I streamed 4 hours or something in September, and those were IRL streams walking to Subway. So I think that the break that I took was because I was extremely burned out. with everything that I've been doing, because I've been live streaming. I've been co-streaming and live viewing for the last 2.5 years, in addition to doing solo queue, in addition to doing stream scrims, and in addition to, you know, miscellaneous content that I would end up producing. And so I don't think that there's necessarily any intent to lean on people. I think the environment that Cloud9 will have is ultimately going to be easier to operate inside of, because I'm only operating on one time zone. Obviously, that time zone leaks into some other time zones. Like, it'll still be possible to watch LCK, you know, when LCK is live, because PST tends to go into LCK. You guys might have noticed that Fudge was very often on all of my LCK co-streams because of how PST overlaps with KST. It's a pretty easy thing for PST to be able to, like, watch LCK or something. So I think in this regard, I don't think anything's really changing. Other stuff that, I mean, I started doing is, like, in September. I mean, I wasn't as active on social media. I've been a lot more active lately, but I do still think that it is toned down because I don't have as much to worry on or focus about. I think joining Cloud9 is actually less stressful than everything that I was doing. So this actually goes against, well, it doesn't go against exactly, but it adds on to something that I answered up here. The reason that I think Cloud9 is less stressful is because, again, I am in one time zone. Being in one time zone is something I haven't done in 2.5, 3 years. I have not lived in one time zone for 2.5 and 3 years. No longer do my sleep schedules have to be broken up into blocks or something in order to, you know, co-stream LCS, do LEC, do LCK, fret over if I'm going to get a video out, and do all this other stuff. I don't have to worry about stuff like that. I don't have to worry about my engagement being the same way, because I think that just being a part of Cloud9 carries it carries something that unfortunately I've always detested, which is just the title itself has a really weird power in esports that I think that it shouldn't have. Because what I mean by that is that a lot of anti-me people are probably really upset now that they can't use the appeal to authority that you know, is there something that LCS coaches or LEC coaches or LCK coaches just don't get that I get, right? Because I'm just not a coach. But now they can't use the title argument. But I think the title argument was always really dumb. But what I will say is that the title thing does act as a defensive measure against idiots who don't realize that the title argument was never an argument ever. So it acts as a preemptive blockade versus very unintelligent people that don't realize that there's nothing that actually qualifies people for these positions, right? And what I mean by that is that, yes, I'm head coach of Cloud9. Does that mean that my game knowledge has somehow changed just because I now have a title? The answer is no. Nothing actually changes, right? Because there's nothing that qualifies people necessarily for these positions. There's nothing to gate people from getting these job titles. But what it does do is that there's a lot of people that don't realize that, or they don't believe that that's actually the case. They think that there is a certain level of game knowledge that you have to have, or people in these positions, you know, do have to be capable of X, Y, and Z, and it's really not the case. But I can actually lean on the reality that it does block. It acts as like a Twitter block. It's like a soft block against a certain demographic of people that would otherwise be toxic against me. So, I mean, there's the time zone thing that the Cloud9 has going for me, where I'm in one time zone that adds a lot less stress. It decreases so much. There's the title defense that I have, where there is a certain demographic. I mean, I can't give a percentage or something. There's just a certain demographic of people that, you know, are going to have to remain silent because they can no longer use, appeal to authority argument or title something. So that's like an unfortunate reality. But I mean, it helps me. It just sucks that, like, it is the reality that it is. I think there's so many things. I don't have to worry about bills anymore. I don't have to worry about, invoices on, certain things. I don't have to worry about, just basic errands. This is also this is gone. Cloud9 prepares meals, I believe 2 or 3 times a day. So I don't have to worry about, okay, when am I eating or what am I going to get to eat or something, because I can plan everything in advance. There's a lot of things that are just done preemptively that there's a lot of things that are just done preemptively that decrease a lot of stress. So I think this makes sense. Okay, so Berserker's a relatively obscure figure. What would I say is the most exceptional trait as a player? Mechanics. I think when it comes to Korean or Chinese players, it's always just going to be mechanics, because very rarely will they do anything to stand out otherwise. And I think the same goes for the one tricks that even get really high on the ladder. If you actually watch their laning or you watch other things that they do, even like itemization, you'll notice that there's a lot of blunders, there's a lot of errors, right? So for Berserker, the most important thing for me was Berserker's mechanics when watching the gameplay. So Berserker was under Teddy and Gumayushi. So there's no possibility to promote when you're under Teddy and Gumayushi. Teddy and Gumayushi are 2 players that I thought were top 3 in the world at AD carry. 2 of the 3, and T1 had both. So I think it's really impossible for Berserker to promote, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't play in LCK or that he didn't have the ability to play in LCK. So I think mechanics are all that I really care about, and everything else is easy to go about. Hey Les, which team do you expect to be the biggest competition LCS and internationally, and why? So I think the biggest competition in LCS, I think that right out the gate, I think it's 100 Thieves, just because they didn't change anything. And I think Team Liquid has like a stacked roster, but I don't know what that immediately translates to right away. So I think that like right out the gate, it's only 100 Thieves. But I don't know. Internationally, I mean, it's hard, right? It's the LPL and LCK teams. So I think this offseason, Afrika got a lot better. I think T1 is relatively the same, but they have the ability to maybe be better, depending on Zeus. And because they're keeping the main roster that got out of a really poor summer split, and they turned it around after removing the coaching staff, and they went on that miracle win streak, and they just turned everything around, and they seemingly kept getting better. And yeah, so I think if T1's roster all stays together, T1 is definitely a contender for LCK in both spring and summer, which also means that, a collision MSI is possible. I think Damwon, interestingly, Damwon got worse. So I think Afrika got better. I think T1 potentially is better. Damwon, I think, got worse. And I think Genji got a lot better. I think Genji is a lot better. For LPL, I don't even know all the rosters that are finalized on LPL yet. So I have no idea what is even going on with LPL, but Generation Generation Chovy is definitely a much stronger team this year. So I think LCK is mostly, again, it's Damwon, T1, and Genji, or Generation Chovy. And then I think Afrika also has the possibility to do good things. So I think all of that is something that is going on. So yeah, I honestly, this year though, Europe does not look, Europe definitely looks weaker again, but there's a lot of big question marks. Who knows? Maybe G2's team is actually, I don't know much about their bot lane at all. Yeah, I just don't know much about their bot lane. I think Europe does look weaker, which is sad. I think the top of LCS is more competitive than the top of LEC. But I do think in a 10 versus 10, so if you take the 10 teams for LCS, you take the 10 teams from LEC, LEC would win. Unless you had it be like an Iron Man style or something like that. I do think that would happen. But anyways, hey Les, congrats on the coaching gig. Every year there's quite a lot of teams players that seem to experience some form of burnout, especially midway. Summer split, Mad Lions this past year. Is there something you personally feel may affect Cloud9? Oh, okay, this one's okay. Okay, so is it something that I think might personally affect Cloud9? The only person I'm worried about, because I don't really know them on a personal level, is Blabber. I don't know how Blabber will be with Burnout, but we have 3 Koreans potentially on the main roster, or 2, because support's not totally decided. But we have 3 Koreans on the main roster. Koreans will grind 18 hours a day, no burnout, just whatever, right? Welcome to Korea 9. I am known as a grinder when I commit to something, so I don't... So while I experienced burnout from co-streaming and other stuff, I think a lot of that was also attributed to emotional turbulence, from feeling like I didn't know what to do in order to move in different directions while doing all of that, as well as operating in all the different time zones. But I think that when I can just sit there in one time zone and grind and slave away at stuff, I'm totally fine. I know that Fudge is... Fudge also tends to, I think, get agitated if other people aren't taking stuff as serious. So I think Fudge is also a grinder. So I just don't know about Blabber. Blabber's the only question mark. He could be I have no idea. So I genuinely don't know. But I don't anticipate burnout. Now for the Academy team, scrimming against the main team, that is a question. I'm not worried about Malice. I'm not worried about Sven. You know, from talking to them both, I also know that Malice is a grind lord. Anyone who's followed his Twitter knows about like his PoE runs, how little he'll sleep, and like all this other stuff. So I think in that regard, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about some of the Academy players. Some of the other Academy players, I don't know. I don't know how they are with grinding. It doesn't matter though, because we have Korean. We have other Koreans on staff which haven't been announced yet. So we have other players from Korea that are challenger level that will be on staff, and they'll be participating in internal scrims and internal solo queue and other stuff. And then obviously I'm attempting to grind a lot again, because a lot of people know that I played in the Academy scrims that we streamed earlier on in the year. So I'll also play in the internal stuff. So I think we have 17 people. I think it's 17 internally. I think we have 17 people internally. So even if some of the players aren't grind lords, I think that we have too many that are. So I think it's I think it's totally fine. So one of the things I think people don't realize about top teams is that the best talent players want to go to those teams. So for instance, it's not a coincidence that top teams historically always seemingly had really good players or really good talent. And the reason is because when you are a new player, when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, right, and you haven't joined a team yet, you want to hold out for the top teams, and you only want to take offers from those top teams. That's all that you want to do. So what ends up happening is that the players who are actually good, the creme de la creme talent pool players, right, they already know who the top teams are, and they want to go to those top teams. And the issue is that it doesn't matter. Like, for instance, if CLG offers Berserker the same exact thing that Cloud9 offers Berserker, Berserker's probably not going, right? Some of the other Koreans that were talked to this past off season, they would only entertain, or apparently according to their agents, they would only talk to select LCS teams, Cloud9, Team Liquid, etc. Right. So Joseph Patrick Marsh, based in chat right now, they do all go to T1 because T1 is, T1 is the pinnacle of Korean esports. So if you are a top Korean ladder player, if you're top 50 on the ladder, you're top 100 or something, and you're actually really good, you're just gonna look. Hanwha Life contacts you for their amateur team or something. No thanks. Live Sandbox contacts you or something. No thanks. If if Nongshim contacts you for their amateur team, you're going to say no thanks. If you're really, really, really high on the ladder and you know that you're really good, and what'll end up happening is you get into, I can say that you wait, you hold out for the T1 or the Dom1 or the Gen G, person to message you, and that's what happens. And basically, once upon a time, Cloud9 and TSM and, Team Liquid and all these other teams, they attracted these players because the absolute elite players only want to go to the elite teams. How many times has anyone seen a truly elite player go to a random team? It almost never happens. It almost never happens. But you never, ever almost see a truly elite player go from a top team to a random team. Some people in chat are citing Chovy right now, and I think Chovy's a different conversation and like why I think that happens. A lot of people saying Reckless right now. Reckless also didn't have another option. Reckless was sort of he was forked in a way. So some people are listing some players that I don't even think the rosters they ended up on are necessarily bad. Yes, I would agree. So a lot of people are citing Crown. Crown, when he went to NA, was already on the decline, number one, and Crown was a player that was struggling in D2 Korea, D3 Korea. When he would come back, and then he would use Riot accounts, and he would climb up 100, 200 LP or something like that on Riot accounts. But I don't think these are very good examples. So very rarely does this happen. Now, what I will also point to is that when these esports orgs lose their allure, you notice really quickly that top talent stop joining. So, for instance, look at maybe, I don't know, I look at TSM right now. TSM has really lost the allure. It has. CLG lost the allure. No one wants to go there anymore. No one wants to go there. So it doesn't matter if you were a top talent, you're not holding out for these orgs anymore. So what I do want to say is that I don't think that it is an example of excellent infrastructure or scouting capabilities, right? Because I think that you could also cite a lot of poor examples that maybe come from those orgs, right? What I do think is that generally the name almost guarantees that the mass majority of people who enter the org actually are good. So I think that's what's happening. I don't think that it necessarily directly correlates with scouting capability, because what a lot of people can see from publicly available content is that most people who comment or do scouting lack the ability to actually do so. And I don't think that that's actually talked about enough. That's been one of my main critiques. I talked about that in some of the League Nightmare episodes, in that there is there's a problem that esports has in general, which is that there's a large there's nothing to gatekeep certain titles and positions, and there's sort of an ineptocracy that is going on, and I think it's problematic. But basically, yes, TLDR, if you are a truly top team, top talent will intentionally hold off waiting to join you. That's just actually how it goes. How confident are you to outdraft other teams in the league? I feel like long-term Cloud9 fan, one of our biggest issues, one of the games in our drafts felt lifeless. So anyways, do I expect to outdraft other teams in the league? Yes. Do I expect that most people consider what an outdraft is to be an outdraft? No, I already acknowledged that is not that's not a thing, because different people have different stances on what is realistic or practical when it comes to capability or execution. The biggest example of this that I can think of, right? Dom had a really good video that he cut up and he put on his YouTube channel, which is me, Fudge, Nemesis, and I think Max, advocating for one draft and Dom advocating for the other draft. And then owner weighed in at the very end in the post-game interview. So I think there's things like that that'll happen where some people will say that Cloud9 lost the draft because it's not practical to assume that the players are capable of executing or doing certain things. I think this is a reality. I think that I think blundering draft is something that can happen for sure. And I also think that through my own metrics, there might be situations where I determine that the draft is lost through my own personal criteria, but that the draft is won relative to who the enemy team is. And I think that's a different question in itself that I think I more accurately answered in the main Reddit thread, if that makes sense. Someone's saying that you won't have 10 minutes to think and champ select, only 30. So we're having an app made right now where I can dial back the clock on myself because I want to get to a point that I was at in BBQ, which is I can I can just say the picks really, really fast. What would be the most difficult thing to so I think the most difficult thing to get across is all of the Korean players have probably never. So in Korea, you're not really taught academically. You're not taught to ask questions. You're not taught to ask why. You're not taught to challenge status quo ideas. And I think that, obviously, the way that I think about the game and the way that I talk about the game and the way that I look at the game is going to be very alien to them. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle. I don't think it's impossible because I've gotten along with a lot of Korean players. Obviously, like, the BBQ players continue to live with me for a very long time. I've had other Korean players, like, reach out to me in private. And I think that, like, I'm going to say this is, like, I don't know. It's weird to say it's, like, an achievement, right? But I'll say this because Joe actually commented on it in the BMW esports Discord. Me and Faker agreed on how LoL should be played. Or we liked the idea of how LoL should be gone about. Joe publicly revealed this because everyone knows from my T1 announcement video that Faker signed off on me joining T1. Faker actually was the last step. I had to basically there was a chain of command that I had to get approval from, and Faker was the last one that would sign off. So I had to have a multi-hour conversation with Faker, and then there was also other follow-up conversations that I had with him. So yeah, Joe revealed that in the BMW esports stuff. The BMW esports AMA Discord thingy. So yeah, we liked the vision or the idea of how, you know, things could have been gone about. So yeah. So I mean, if I've never had experience, I've never had much. I've never had bad experiences with Korean players. I just think that that's probably the most difficult thing. Is that none of the Korean players are probably used to the way of approaching the game that we're going to obviously bring up. So, that's pretty much it. And that's that's it. So I will see you guys all later. Max might do a guest stream again on my channel, and I'm looking into having other players do guest streams as well. So we'll see. All right, guys. Bye.